So Star Rail just officially announced that they are planning on making adjustments to issues close to Trailblazers' hearts, including difficulty deploying older characters on the battlefield and the strengthening of these older characters. But what does this actually mean? As you likely already know, indirect buffs have been a very intentional thing for a while now, with Sunday being the clearest example by how much stronger he makes Jingyuan. But besides new teammates, they've also had things like equipment, in-game combat modifiers, and new types of content, which have also been considered buffs in that they can make some older characters gain new relevance. So the fact that they actually addressed how players are feeling like these actions aren't enough, and that power creep is making it so old units are significantly harder to use now than ever before, instead of just ignoring the issue and playing it off as a necessary evil for the sake of selling new characters, is pretty telling that whatever they have planned is likely going to be quite different from what we've seen up to now. Naturally, everyone is going to wildly speculate about this until we get actual details at some unknown point in the future, but to keep our expectations realistic, there's actually another gacha game out there with a beloved and well-established system for directly buffing older characters that we can use to get a more realistic idea of how such an implementation has both benefits and drawbacks. Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle is my most played gacha outside of HoYoverse games, and it's been a juggernaut of the mobile gacha space for 10 whole years. Its gameplay is loosely similar to Star Rail in that you build a team before entering battle that can crudely be generalized as being turn-based. Given that gachas have their servers shut down once they start losing too much money, Dokkan has managed to stay relevant for so long by making crucial changes across the course of its lifespan. One such change was the implementation of the fan-beloved Extreme Z Awakening system, in which you play an event, are awarded 6 pulls worth of premium currency just by completing it, and then are given the materials to upgrade an existing character into a strictly better version of itself. And these buffs aren't small by any means, as units that have become completely irrelevant over time can instantly shoot back up to a top tier must-have. This pretty much seems like a perfect thing to do because players can be happy their old favorites are good again, and the developers actually do benefit because a unit which normally wouldn't have much draw can suddenly become very sought after by players to the point where they're willing to spend. But when a game is too generous for their own good, they can actually struggle to bring in enough income, so how does Dokkan manage to maintain a good balance between buffing old characters while making the new ones still desirable? It works because of a system that Dokkan has for all of its characters called categories. Categories is exactly what it sounds like. Each character is grouped into multiple tags to be put on teams with characters of those same categories. It's like how Star Rail characters are divided into paths, and some characters have specific synergies with allies of that path, but then if they were also labeled with what planet they're from, their faction, and so on. Dokkan's content is balanced around this, with some battles having exclusive rewards for using a specific category team, and other events going even farther by granting significant buffs to only characters of a certain category. So a new banner character might be the strongest in the game, but these category requirements incentivize you to use your other units you might not have been willing to use otherwise. It would be like if Star Rail had a combat stage where all Belobog characters do double damage, causing Zilla to skyrocket in value and be a better option than any newer DPS. This system is really good for how it encourages unit diversity, but there is one pretty significant downside. Making new units strong while maintaining the strength of older ones and having content designed around the fact that players have access to both ends up heavily incentivizing having accounts be built around horizontal scaling rather than vertical scaling. What I mean by that is that entering a game like Dokkan as a new player is incredibly daunting because of how it expects you to be able to have all these different kinds of teams rather than just one good one. Like as an extreme example, there's a game mode where you bring 112 characters or 16 teams of 7 into a gauntlet of stages where you can't reuse a team after they clear a stage or get knocked out. The 4 free-to-play teams the game gives you is obviously not nearly enough to make significant progress in it. New players basically have no chance of clearing any of the other new challenging content because of its category requirements. Of course, any player can reach that point after playing long enough and collecting enough characters, but I could definitely see this being overwhelming and a point of frustration for some. And also, a Dokkan unit getting an EZA doesn't always necessarily save it, as it's still confined to not being further adjusted after being shipped out. Sometimes a character gets one and they're still just not that good. EZA'd units are also still prone to being power crept, which is why Dokkan decided to just do it again by introducing super EZAs to rebuff old EZAs. The system clearly isn't meant to combat the root cause of power creep and is more of a series of short-term solutions. So when it comes to Star Rail characters getting buffed, I can't help but think there has to be some kind of catch. This game is a money-making machine, in large part to power creep making new characters so incredibly desirable. HoYoverse does some cool things sometimes, but it's hard to believe they would just throw away what works by making characters already owned by a portion of the player base meta relevant again without selling a new unit, while decreasing the incentive for pulling new ones. And if we look at the original developer post, something nobody is really talking about is how they mentioned adding new challenge goals to the game. Maybe being tasked with beating a stage using only Bellbot characters is not that far-fetched after all. Now admittedly, Star Rail does have much better ways to ensure specific characters thrive over others. Like in the current iteration of Memory of Chaos, having trotters spawn that do a significant amount of damage to elites when they die would theoretically make Zila a better option than Fei Xiao because of her kill resets if she were buffed to have the same general damage output. Obviously that's excluding destruction and erudition characters, but you get the idea. Among all of the limited 5 stars in the game, each one has their own unique quirks and mechanics that could make them be more useful than what is typically seen as their competition, and I'm confident the Star Rail devs can find creative ways to take advantage of these, but my only worry is that the demands become so unique that you can't get around them without using those specific buffed units. I do realize how pessimistic this all sounds. Maybe they're just planning on giving a small numbers buff to a character paired with a new outfit to sell, but I do think it's important that we keep our expectations in check until we get real details about HoYo's plans. I hope you found this video to be interesting or insightful. Subscribe for more Honkai Star Rail discussion videos, and as always, thanks for watching.